G'day everybody. Today I'm talking about a wolf staff that I built for a girl. It was a commission piece. She's a D&D'er, but she wanted to have a costume piece for when she goes and does things at Comic-Cons or things like that. The idea is it's a staff with a wolf head on it, and the wolf inside its eye has an arcane jewel that she uses to channel her power, and it lights up the staff. So I decided to try and make a staff that would actually light up. I bought Perspex and got a really thick Perspex. I cut 3 different flame designs on it so that the flame, I was hoping that the 3 flame depths would make it flickery, and then used the scroll saw to cut it out really neatly, gave it a light sand, and then put it in the vise and decided to try and light her up. So I drilled holes in the bottom of each of the flames, big enough to fit an LED in, and then because the LED is going to light up, I also then drilled out the flame, the shape of the flame inside, so the brightest bit of what a flame would be. The intention was that the edges would light up and give you the colour, and that the insides, where I've drilled it out to make the shape of the flame inside, might also light up better with the LEDs. I used LEDs that are pulsing LEDs. You can just buy them and they already flicker. I looked at a whole bunch of circuit diagrams for doing things with transistors and capacitors and stuff, and all of the circuits were tricky to say the least and problematic. I built a couple of them dry. I went and bought a bunch of components and tried, but it didn't. I wasn't as satisfied with the result as it was with just having the flickering LEDs. I then found out that if I put an LED in the circuit with the flickering ones, they all flicker, and so I was able to use multiple colors and have them flickery. You can see there that I did a test. This was a piece of timber that I found. I really liked some of it. There was it was a longer bit, and there was 2 bits of it that I thought were really good. So I ended up chopping it off to use the two different ends without the bit in the middle. Drilled down the center, put a metal dowel in, marked it all out, bored it out with a borer bit, and put it in, and then glued it together with glue it together, sorry. For the top, while I was making it and doing all the things, I left it in the two pieces to make it easier to handle. And when I finally get everything ready to rock and roll and everything, I will put the circuit together and glue it, make it long. So this is with the flashing LEDs and the one constant LED. So I wanted blue lights and stuck them in. I have already soldered them together and put heat shrinks on over all the ends of it, and it was a little bit tricky. I used one flashy one plain one in each circuit. I actually made it as 3 separate circuits, even though it's powered by the one battery. It was easier to do with the amount of resistors that you got to put in, and when I did it the way I've done it, I haven't had to have as many resistors in the circuit. The draw from the LEDs actually make the circuit okay without extra. So this is how bright it gets when you do it. The single blue one there will be behind a jewel in the eye to show the arcane power operating, and then it's just the flashy, fiery, mouthy thing. So a lot of fun testing it out, really cool in the dark. This actually took a really long time. I spent a bit of time on the video when I videoed it, putting the circuits together and that, but I've saved you from all of my tests and trials and figuring out how to do it. As you can see, I soldered them together. I bent the LEDs so that they fit into the different things. It was complicated looking, but when all said and done, it was okay. Whenever you're using a 9-volt battery, be very careful that your wires on the clippy thing that you have for clipping it, when you put it down, don't touch together. I had a battery actually almost catch fire. It expanded and bubbled the sticker and everything, just sitting there by itself because the two wires touched. So even though it's only a little 9-volt battery, be careful. You could set the place on fire. So I needed to be a switch that when she holds it, it's on, but when she lets go of it, it comes off. So I had to buy a pressure switch like you'd have on some of the saws and things, but yeah, when you let it go, it comes back off. So super glued, liquid nails everything in, pre-drilling holes. In the end, to get the wires all the way down without seeing them, I drilled lots of holes and just threaded it in and out, sewed it like if it was if you're putting it through a piece of fabric. The next thing to do was to work out just how the wolf was going to go. I had a whole lot of reference from 3D models and pictures and things of what a wolf head would look like. The idea was to try and end up with one that might have been carved from the timber, so that it was a bit tribal-y carving rather than a 3D printed looking thing. And I started with just styrofoam. This is a piece of foam that was from a television or something or other. It might have even been one of the computers or something. So it was a bit of spare foam, free, and always a good way to go if you can, because foam's pretty hard to come by. So I cut out the big shapes, and then with the hot wire cutters, I started to shape it out. So I made two sides because I didn't have a big block of foam. I cut out the center where the pole's going to go through, and this gave me basically the shape of the head that I could then go and build on later. So it's just blocking out all of the bits that I need to cut out to try and get the basic shape for the head. I was actually quite surprised when I was doing this how quickly this came together. I was initially a bit dubious about whether I was going to be chucking the whole lot out and starting again with building things up a little piece at a time, but it worked together well. So just angling and taking it through and carving out the things. A couple of times sat down again to redraw the lines, because once you take the edge off, your line disappears. And then it was just a process of putting it through, different angles, sometimes splitting it in half to do the individual bits. Now I didn't worry about the ears because I was putting them on later, and so I ended up with a basic, could have been a lion at this stage, a basic shape for a head, stuck on the stick, just checking it out. I made sure in each stage to still check that the that the LEDs were still functioning, and at one stage the eye one stopped and I had to pull it apart. So it's always really good when you're doing these sorts of things. Every time you add a new bit, just make sure you haven't crushed anything or chopped anything accidentally. I had my Warhammer wolves, Space Wolves and Fenrisian wolves there to keep checking out the wolf designs, and referred quite a lot back to the original design that I did. This was to try and get the neck and to shape it a little bit more, because as I was working out and finding out for myself what a wolf looked like, and to get it to work, I realised that I was going to need a real lot of foam. So I did it in pieces and split it in two each time so that I could put it around the pole. There you go. Cut out little ears, glued everything together with just PVA glue to start with, and then taped it up until it was taped up. Once it was glued together and had dried for a long time, I started with this product here that's called soft clay, sorry. I get it from Daiso in Australia. You can actually order it on Amazon, but it's the Daiso soft clay. It's an air dry clay that feels so much just like the base that they make oases for the flower arranging when you go to a florist, the things your flowers come in. So it's extremely light and airy. It molds really well. if you put water with it, it smooths out super well. I didn't bother so much with the water because all I was doing was putting the PVA glue on, and since it's water based, and I just put it on, and the PVA glue, the watery bit of that, I had a little bit of water for keeping my fingers wet, but generally if I just put the PVA glue on, I could spread it around, and as you can see, it really easy to mold. You can put it on in great big lumps and just mold down the edges, or you can put it on quite thinly. Since the time that I've made this, I actually made a mask for my nephew of the Puss in Boots, and I made it around a balloon like you would an old paper mache sort of style with the soft clay. It only ended up being about probably 10 millimeters thick, and I was able to attach elastic to it, and he could wear it to his school. It did split with play, but because of how thin it was, it split down the middle, but not during the day when he needed to do it for his thing. It was afterwards when he was mucking around in it, and he blamed his dad. And so I brought it home and reinforced it with a little bit of cardboard and just glued it back together with PVA glue again, and it has done the distance, and you couldn't see where I joined it. So the process for building the face and doing what I'm doing here, again, just checking out the reference material, checking out the models that I have from the Space Wolf Warhammer models, any pictures I could find of wolves, and the original picture that I did for the design to show the girl what I was doing. This all took a bit over a week and a half. I was doing it at night after work, so you'll probably see through the course of the video several changes of clothing. And this was the first time that I'd used the soft clay for an extended period of time. I've used it as a filler in things. At the end of completely building the head, the actual wolfy thing, the headpiece, was only slightly heavier. It wouldn't have weighed a kilo. So it's a great deal similar to the styrofoam that it was underneath. It didn't make it bulky or heavy at all. The majority of the weight is still in the timber of the staff, and the head's not this great big thing you're lugging around. If you're going to make a mask or something out of it, this would be a great... I am absolutely sold on soft clay by Daiso, and every time I go to Daiso, which is only once or twice a year, if I'm very lucky, I buy boxes of it. It comes in multiple colours. Really easy to paint. When it's dry, the thicker bits have a little bit of a spongy consistency, but they're not, what do you call it? They're not brittle, but you can tell that it's not like the styrofoam is hard. It's probably the same. You could probably leave an impression the same as you would if you stuck your fingernail into styrofoam itself, or the polystyrene. So, yeah. It's really easy to sculpt. And when I had to stop and go and do different things, it just dried. And the next day I came back and put some more PVA glue on and picked up where I left off. So it was really easy to stop and start and just keep adding. There you go. One damaged eye that will have a jewel in it. And a pretty good looking snout, I think. So the process just continued, and I did the both sides. When I was editing this, I wasn't sure how much to show and how much not to show. That people like me sometimes like to see almost the entire process, but you by all means fast forward through if you want, because it like I said, it took a while. You haven't got a whole week's worth of video. You've got sped up everything, but it was do the bits and pieces. You can see that the dry bits that I'd done the day before now are much lighter, and they look... it seriously feels like the oasis that you'd find from a florist. No idea how Daiso does it, but good on them for doing it. So it was just a process of building on. I didn't carve into it at all, so it wasn't build it up thick and carve it out. It was just put on what you need and fiddle around with it, smooth it out, get it looking good. I made all the teeth, and I made the teeth and let them dry, and then I just glued them in, because it was I didn't think it would be sensible to try and mold them and keep working around them. So I just did double everything. I made a long sausage and thinned it out on the ends, and then I cut it in half so that there was equal teeth, equal length, equal shape, all of that sort of thing for making the mouth. This was sorting out the ears. The ears were a little bit tricky because of the way that I'd glued the foam on. Trying to make them thinner but still attach them and blend them into the head was problematic, but I was more than happy with the result. I experimented a little bit with trying to make it hairy, like giving it a bit more texture, but I then remembered that the point is that this was potentially carved from the timber and made with just primitive tools and things, and so it wouldn't have had all of the super fine details. It's, yeah. Anyway, I might just keep watching along with you, and I'll add things as I think you need to know. Because he says, and then continues on, oblivious. So that was, I think, after the second or third day of doing it, and you can see there's bits that are perfectly dry, and then there are bits new that you've added on. Then it came time to put it on the stick, and I made sure I masked up the flamey bits so that I didn't get lots of gunk all over them, and for painting down the track. So here's I super glued the teeth in. I put toothpicks in them, and then I made sure I stuck it in. So there it is. The mouth's got the flame in it, and the teeth go on. And when they got painted, the slight gap in it all, just not a problem. Everything looked like it was supposed to look. At this stage, because everything had been a sort of a proof of concept as you went, I was actually pretty chuffed with the way that it was coming together. And again, every now and again, make sure you turn on the bits and make sure they still work. So there you go, some teeth in there. I added a couple more teeth, and as you can see, we discovered that the eye wasn't working. There's a broken bit there. So always keep your bits going so that you can repair the things you got to repair. And well, there we go. It's back in, and it'll be wonderful. There's a little blue jewel to go over the top of this that I got from, I think this one ended up coming from Spotlight. I went everywhere looking for jewels, and that was harder to get than I thought. Probably, if I was to do it again, I'd think about just getting some clear resin and 3D printing a jewel, and then making it to size, or making it not being so much at the mercy of the things that were available. As it turned out, the one I got was a decent enough size and good to put in. And after I put it in, I just used some more soft clay to shape around it and embed it in there so that it didn't look so much like a piece of costume jewellery that I've whacked in and got from somewhere else. So here we go, working the soft clay into the mouth, making the mouth look a little bit more mouthy, and giving it the same sort of texture. The neck, because I'm going to run the fur down around the outside of the pole, I had to modify all the bits, add to them, and figure out. I didn't want to do the whole of the bulk of the neck with the soft clay, so I put some styrofoam on, but I ended up cutting a real lot of this back off. It is a trial and error thing. When you're using your foam wire cutters, or when you're working with things that melt and stuff, it's always handy to have your respiratory gear on. You don't always see me, but I always do it, especially when I'm doing foam the foam cutter because it does have lots and lots of fumes. I have a fairly big room that I work in, and I do sometimes have fans on to promote that, but always gear up. You only get one set of lungs. So I had drilled the holes, and because I was going to put things on, I threaded the wire in and out and in and out and in and out, and then glued things over the top. So it's the last time I'm going to get to it without some major pulling things apart. And once I've got that soft clay on there, I don't want to be doing that. After I got all of the basic form shaped up, the rest of the fur was individual pieces of fur, just making sausages like that you'll see, and then with PVA glue just putting them on, and a little bit trial and error. I did big ones and small ones based on where it was going to go. So there's some long ones that go around. It needed to wrap around the pole. So after I did long ones to fill in the space, I did enough to sort of disguise what was underneath it, and then I came back and made smaller ones and filled them in between. Again, this was a really lengthy process. It took a bunch of days, hours at a time. I got bored out of me scone for part of it. I tried longer and shorter, and some were too long and some were, once you'd done 100 of them, you still couldn't see anything. So it ended up just being a combination of biggies and littlies, and gluing them in place and then just shaping them around till they followed around. So yep, there it is, going around, and it was just keep doing that. Spin it around in the vise and keep going. Try and keep the direction of the so that it twists around, so that the head forms in. And there we go. So okay, so that's the basic crafty part of the wolf head. There's more things to do to come with the staff and the painting and everything, which I'll show you in a second video. Just for the sake of time, I've split this into two, and I'll try and upload them at the same time. So this is the end of the part one bit. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you enjoy the part two bit and it all come together. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part two.